2025. We'll begin with item 1, apologies for absence. I understand there are apologies from Councillor Dean. Are there any other apologies? Nope. Perfect. Item 2 is election of chair. So we will elect chair for the remainder of the 2024 to 2025 municipal year. Do I have any nominations?
I'll nominate Councillor Whitehouse.
Councillor Whitehouse. Do we have a seconder for that?
You're very short on politicians.
Need a seconder for chair, either.
Nominate Councillor Foster.
Councillor Foster, do I have a seconder for that nomination?
Yeah, we're going to be here all night now, aren't we? Yeah, more than happy to second Councillor Foster if that's what we want to do.
Councillor Foster, all those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Councillor Foster, I will hand over to you as chair if you'd like to.
Thank you.
Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Looking down the agenda, the next item on the agenda is declarations of interest. Have we got any declarations of interest? Then we'll move on to minutes of the previous meeting. Got anything to raise or no?
If anybody remembers the last meeting, they're doing very well, Chair.
Well, okay.
Started.
So in this case, we'll skip over that and we'll move on to joint waste update. And I think that's Lily. All right, Lizzie, do you want me to move slide or?
No, that's fine. I can. So for the meeting tonight, thank you, Chair. We were asked to put together a quick overview of what we've been doing over the last 6 months and a quick highlight of actions that we need to think about moving forward. And there are a number of items in here that we could do with the committee's steer on so that we can make sure that we guide our actions moving forward in the correct direction. So I'll whiz through the presentation, but if there are any questions as I go through, please do let me know. So the items that we're going to cover tonight will be the fleet procurement for our main fleet, the food waste fleet procurement, the route optimisation and round changes to food waste service into our overall service, food waste caddies and bins, which was up there twice, don't know why, the AD process and food waste bags, potential for slimming down our black bins and section 106 bin payments, the Recycle for Good campaign, quick update on staffing, finance and governance, and a few other updates, as well as a bit of a insight into the Simpler Recycling government initiative that we're all working towards. So just a quick overview of the fleet procurement, and a big thank you to particularly Darren, Pete and Vicky and the team for taking this forward. This has been a monumental task. I've never seen spreadsheets so large. But just to update the committee, we have awarded a contract for the hire of a fleet of 26 Vaughan and Dennis Eagle vehicles for our refuse and dry recycling to Riverside NRG, and we are now in mobilisation meetings with them. One of those took place today. It will be delivered within the allocated budget, which was agreed by both councils, and the vehicles will be delivered this weekend. So Darren's getting no rest this weekend. And they'll be ready to use from the 31st of March, which is Monday. So that's brilliant news. We've had a site visit. Councillor Foster and Councillor Whitehouse went to go and visit the sites being. You didn't go. Only Councillor Foster went to go and visit the vehicles on the production line, and we will be having 2 vehicles wrapped. The idea of wrapping the 2 vehicles with the Recycle for Good branding is to try and encourage more sponsors to come forward to help wrap the other vehicles. So initially the vehicles will just be logoed on the front, just on the cabs, and then the team will be working to raise more sponsorship to be able to wrap the rest of the delivery. So don't be surprised if you see white shiny vehicles travelling around the district, because they will be ours. We're working with NRG Riverside to welcome them into the depot and to close down operations with SFS, who are our current provider. And we've had one member of staff Tupia Cross, and that's one of our vehicle maintenance team to NRG Riverside. So the next action is to train the team on the new trucks. One of the things I did want to highlight here is when we get new trucks, it won't always be plain sailing from day one. They are different to manoeuvre, they are different to drive. Teams will take longer to get used to them. So rounds might take slightly longer. We might have issues with the Bartec units because they might not go in swiftly, not because of Bartec, but just because of the way in which, you know, these things come together. So please do bear with us if some rounds are not completed as swiftly as we'd like in the first couple of weeks as a team get up to speed on those vehicles and get them running. And just to say that we will be raising sponsorship to fund delivery across the wider fleet as we move forward in partnership with the team at Tamworth. Are there any comments or questions on?
Just in relation to the comms on the new fleet then, because it would really be good if we could get some positive comms across both towns on this and probably with our members involved in that.
So we've got one open question on that, Stephen, because PERDA kicks in tomorrow. We need to double check with our governance officer that promoting such a large procurement isn't going to breach PERDA. So we're just waiting for guidance on that, and then we'll take that forward either before or after PERDA accordingly.
When do they go live? Sorry, is it?
31st, next Monday.
Could we do it as an officer? Comms then?
You could do, yeah.
I'm hopeful. So we're just waiting for guidance from government.
I think on that we've known when PERD will be and we know when these are landing, so we can't excuse ourselves from getting off the comms on that. These dates have been in the diary for ages, so we just can't avoid that. I think we've just got to deal with that head on. I think for you, Chair, just on the comms issue, I'm slightly concerned about the messaging of please bear with us on it. That doesn't feel particularly resident centric. I get that people will need to bear with us, but if I was a resident not involved in the council, I'd say, well, that's great, but that's on you to make sure that there's no impact on me as a resident. So I'd caution us against going too hard on any comms which say bear with us because we might get things wrong for a couple of weeks. I think there's a really positive story there of what we're doing. I'd feel uncomfortable as a council affronting any comms which said bear with us while we actually get things wrong. I totally get the comms, but I think we've got to be really careful about how we approach them. Alternatively, that would get us out of the PERDA issue if we say it's going to be really shit for 2 weeks.
Blame the county council.
Does that still put us in PERDA? I don't know.
Bill?
Lizzie, you mentioned sponsorship. Have you got an initial feel for what that might look like for the RAP as far as the type of organisations and possibly even what the finances might look like for that?
Yes, so we know the cost of wrapping a vehicle, and we have 2 sponsors that will feature on our vehicles. So we've got a headline sponsor that's Bartec, so that will feature on both of those new vehicles, and we can never say the next one, Fawn Zoella. Will also feature on one of our vehicles. They've also paid into sponsorship. So I think that we'd be looking for companies that are in the recycling arena, community organisations that are supporting that type of ambition, and we'll make sure that they are aligned with our messages.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm just in relation to the comment you just made. The 2 businesses that you mentioned, are they do they operate across Lichfield and Tamworth, or are they Lichfield?
So they're national providers. So Fawn is the vehicle provider, and Bartec is a software provider that has supporting us. So they provide the tech in our trucks and also our back office system.
And just, sorry, Chair, but on sponsorship, we need to be really careful about our due diligence work about who's sponsoring us, and just to make sure that we've done that and we're comfortable with who our sponsors are.
Thanks, Chair. Different question completely. I just wanted to check for my own sanity, I suppose. We're not changing the rounds, are we? The rounds are as they currently are.
Exactly as they are right now.
Cool. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions now? Yep. Okay, Liz, do you want to move on? Yep.
So the next procurement we've been buying recently that we have now completed is the food waste procurement. We've definitely stolen the march on many other authorities across the country who are still scrabbling to get onto the order books of organisations that are providing these fleets. And we've placed our order thanks to, again, to the great endeavours of Darren and Steve, who has moved to Wolverhampton, but thank you, Steve, and Vicky and Pete. So we've managed to procure the fleet within the New Burdens funding that we've been given, and the vehicles will be delivered in time for the rollout of those weekly food waste collections from the 31st of March. And we've awarded the contract to an organisation called Turbomatic UK. So the next actions that we've got coming up, and this is definitely a moving feast, the food waste project. We don't yet have the funding for the revenue element of the project, so we don't know how much money we're getting for staff, etc., etc. We are carrying out a space review in partnership with our health and safety team and major projects at our depot to ensure that we can bring those food waste vehicles safely into the Burntwood depot, and we can have a drive-in, drive-out operation, which is much safer than reversing, turning, etc. And we're also working to determine the vehicle maintenance approach, because these are a fleet of trucks that we've purchased rather than contract hire as per the previous fleet that we've just discussed. So we need to work out how we're going to maintain those vehicles going forward. We're working in partnership with the Staffordshire Council through LDC's procurement team to procure the food waste caddies and bags, which we have a slide on later in the pack. We're also establishing that project team so we can make sure we juggle all those moving parts successfully. And we're also going to have to update our operator's licence. So Pete, who's not here tonight, will be being trained so he can be on that O licence, because obviously the fleet itself will increase in size. So that's being progressed as well. Any comments on food waste fleet procurement?
Chair 3, the final point there about the, no, sorry, not the final point, the space review that we're doing on that. What happens if we don't have the space available?
So the team are confident that there will be space, and if we don't, we'll have to then be creative. We have got some flex in the parks, and we may well indeed talk to Tamworth about utilising some of their depot for things like storage of bins, etc. But we are also doing a full review of everything that is at the depot currently to make sure that we are utilising that space absolutely effectively.
So it's kind of checking that we definitely do rather than starting from scratch thinking do we or don't we?
It's a box we've got to tick.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's a box, but there's no problems as I can see.
Brilliant. Okay, that's really good. And another one in terms of the operator's license, where there's going to be, we're currently licensed at 35. We've got to go up, and there's a cost associated with that. Will there be sufficient headroom remaining in the New Burdens funding to fund that license?
Yeah, so we've had an extra fund of cash from the government, so they topped up our money, so we have got some extra funding. So
We'll cover that. Yeah. Okay, super.
Anything else on the food waste?
I suppose just a point on the old licensing, just following on from that. I mean, you know, people need to be trained to have the carry that, and I think there's something about sustainability. So we probably need to look at across the two organisations of what the kind of resilience is around that, and if there are any training requirements or something actually to take away.
I've talked to Annie and Hannah about that, and I think you've offered resilience with your own O licence holders, so I think that's really good.
Yeah.
So next is route optimisation around changes. So in order to bring the food waste collections in, we do need to look at potentially tweaking, and I would say tweaking our rounds. We've done an initial route optimisation exercise with BIFA, and the purpose of that was to determine the number of food waste trucks that we needed, so we didn't over purchase vehicles, and that was funded through the Food Waste New Burdens. And Vicky's just placing an order now to extend that piece of work to create a much more detailed route optimisation. We think that this will result in proposals to change some people's bin collections. We envisage it's likely to be Wednesdays because they are our tightest day. This is the first committee steer that we're looking for. When we rolled out blue bags and bins, we did changes to days as well as introducing a new service, and it was much more confusing for residents. What we'd like to understand from the committee is the view as to whether or not we could tweak the days this September, October, get people used to their new collection days, make sure that they're content and happy and everything's working fine. And then we roll the food waste collections out in March the next year, when all of that's bedded down, so that confusion for residents is limited. We have in the past changed days, aside from introducing new initiatives, and it's been relatively seamless. So we think that this would be a sensible approach, but we wanted to take the committee's steer on this.
Can I ask you a question? Roughly how many residents would be affected? Would it be all residents or?
It wouldn't be all residents,
No.
but we don't know that until we do the piece of work with Biffa, and they have some tech that they use to balance the rounds out, and then we'll be able to get a clearer picture of how many would need to be moved.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair. So I'm a little bit concerned about, I understand why we use Biffa because of the tech that they've got and the expertise as well, but from my perspective, some of the pain we felt when we rolled out the blue bags was because Biffa over optimised the rounds from our perspective. So they reduced them, didn't they?
They did, yeah. If I can just, sorry. One of the issues we had last time, they never took into account new builds.
Yeah.
What we're doing this time is putting new builds in builds that haven't been done yet. To give us that flexibility, that chance, so these guys have got time to pick up the rooms.
Okay, thanks.
Really importantly, does that affect Lichfield or Tamworth residents more?
Both Wednesdays.
Hopefully you're going to move on to, you're going to take the pain for.
More than happy to be back.
It's more than balancing. It's
I know,
more than balancing as well, because on a Monday we might have 7 refuse vehicles out Wednesday, so we have to.
So I think, am I right in thinking that whilst it would affect Wednesday the most, the reality is that will ripple out and affect all days, just in slightly different proportions. Okay. And then in terms of the decision that we're actually being asked to make this evening, I'd be more than happy to say, in principle, I understand the need to roll the route changes out earlier to let them bed in well ahead of the other changes. I think I'd be really uncomfortable in just signing it off tonight to say, yeah, go and do it. So I'm just trying to understand process wise exactly what we're giving approval for this evening, and at what point that would come back for formal sign off either by this committee or elsewhere.
So it's a steer just to indicate to us that we are heading in the right direction if we look back to you. And that proposal would come back to the Joint Waste Committee and then would go through the individual governance process of the councils. So absolutely, this isn't a decision that isn't then changeable, but it will just guide us in terms of our actions to make sure we're not wasting our time coming up with a plan that then will not find support if it's a sensible plan as we move forward.
I think I'd probably second Simon's point about Biffa as well. I think they caused us a lot of pain in the amongst other things, to be fair. But that was...
To echo what Darren said, the fact that they didn't put any of the new builds in and any of the proposals, we'd originally said we got the uplift from the LLPG with all the proposals in as well, but they weren't put into those rounds, and we feel quite importantly that they need to be, so we've got the wriggle in.
Do you think we're in a better position now in terms of contract management to make sure that they do do the necessary on that? Cool, absolutely. Right on fire.
Phil first.
Yeah, just when do you think we'll know a lot more detail when we talk about likely culprits Wednesday? What's the next stage to actually firm up so that we definitely know where we are with it?
We've got a kick-off meeting with them next week to start. The first process will be us giving them everything that we've got now, and then they'll feed it into their computer, come back with some ideas. We'll have the final say. We'll say yes or no. We'll say, well, actually, no, we think that would be better, because they can use the technology, but we've got the knowledge of the area. So while it isn't all what they say, they'll come back with a proposal and we'll tweak it.
Yeah, we've got more understanding of capabilities as well. We know what these vehicles are capable on a daily basis, a more realistic view of what is achievable.
I think last time, because
does it come back to this committee again then after that?
Be the next committee we'd bring it back.
I think it was Anna.
Thank you, Chair. Just to reassure as well, we would work collaboratively to ensure the communications piece was there. So if there were to be changes, then we'd make sure there was a as comprehensive communications plan as possible to ensure that we're informing residents fully in both authority areas.
That's for generally, so yeah, I mean, I'd support very much, like, you know, in principle, but we need the detail really. And I think, you know, because it's been flagged that there has been concerns with previous rollouts, the assurance that, you know, we will mitigate against them as far as possible, then with that.
Okay, you got your steer?
Yeah.
I don't think we need a vote on it, but I think you got it, just.
Shall I move on? No more questions yet. So food waste caddies and bins. We are currently out to procure food waste caddies and bins, and Vicky's brought some examples along today. So every household will get 2 things. This is the outside bin. I think it's 20 litres. 23 litres, and then this is the inside caddy that goes in the kitchen, I assume, and that's a 7 litre caddy. And we are joining forces with other Staffordshire authorities to go out to procure. I think the biggest conversation is the colour.
Not great.
Kitchen.
Not what? Not great.
The likely colour is silver grey.
Internal.
For the internal, yeah.
And green for the external.
Leader regularly reminds me I've got 0 taste.
So we'll go with grey then.
And the suggestion is that we go with a standard colour across the Staffordshire Partnership to support communications in case people live on the border, because councils will all be saying the same thing with regards to comms. Looking for a product that's 100% recyclable at end of life. And the caddies will be delivered with a leaflet and a roll of liners, which is, well, that's up for discussion, and that's on the next slide. It's worth noting the distribution of the caddies will be a significant undertaking that will need to take place prior to the rollout of the new service, so it should be going to get caddies early. And then the anaerobic digestion, or AD capacity, is being procured by Staffordshire County Council as the disposal authority. And we are, as I said, we're procuring early to get ahead of the curve, so we don't end up being in a massive queue behind lots of other authorities. So we will get our caddies and bins on time. Any questions on the caddies and bins?
Yeah.
How did we arrive at the decision that this is the best option for us?
Using the use of caddies.
Yeah.
It's just a standard practice across all of the country. They're all going to have an indoor and an outdoor caddy.
So there's no alternative options that any of the councils do, or there is no other methods that they're doing?
Not that I'm aware of. I've not seen anybody.
The only way it'll be different is in the communal, where you've got flats, and then they'll still have an internal caddy, but they'll have bins in their bin stored.
Okay, so we're saying standard option across the country is internal caddy of that size, external caddy of that size.
Yeah.
Where I live, that's what we've had for years here.
Yeah. Pretty good answer. What in terms of procuring this, you know, that's going to kick a hornet's nest. I'll kick that hornet's nest later on.
And the budget for this, did you say that that's not covered by the initial funding that we?
No, so that's covered by new bill.
Yes.
Yeah.
Else, no?
So I'll just move on to the AD process and food waste bags. And this is the second steer that we're looking for from the committee tonight. So there is an extra paper on this, which was more of an information paper which is in your pack. So it's recommended best practice to provide food waste bags or liners to customers in their first bin delivery, and then for them to be able to request them from us, subject to New Burdens funding. This is the approach that the highest recycling authorities use, and it's suggested by RAP, who is an organisation that advise local authorities in relation to driving up recycling. customers don't need to use them. They can use newspaper, they can use their own sacks, they can use whatever they like. But the advice is to make a stock of sacks available for people that would otherwise perhaps not be able to afford them and need to come to us for those items. So we're seeking the committee's view on providing the bin liners subject to adequate new building funding, but also on the actual bag material itself. So it may seem contradictory, but the AD plant, and indeed I put a little diagram up there if you can actually squeeze in on it, but the AD plants much prefer non-recyclable liners despite us sending them recycling materials. And the reason for this is that the vegetable bags, the lighter weight bags can fall to pieces and make it very, very difficult for them to actually take the rubbish, the food waste out of them. Even if we send them vegetable bags or other bags, they still would go to the incineration process. And they do prefer us to send the waste in sturdier plastic bags. Can be made from recyclable material, but nonetheless sturdy plastic bags. So I just wanted, because obviously this is a communications issue, customers receiving a plastic bags inside a recycling campaign, and we just wanted to seek the committee's steer on this and their thoughts around this so we can guide the procurement as we head forward. One of the other key things to say is that the recyclable / vegetable bags often degrade, so if we have those stored up in perhaps even a slightly damp area, they can end up sticking together and then are not usable if they get damaged, so they're much harder to store. So it was really that we wanted this tonight.
How do you see individual households accessing those bin liners then?
So they would have to come and pick them up. So I can't imagine it would be a massive amount of people that would be collecting them, but it would probably be people on a lower income who would otherwise purchase them.
Tamworth, many years ago, we did a very similar thing for dog waste. We offered free bags, and at the time that was the incentive to stop the mess. But what happened was the people were coming in for the dog litter bags, but using them for everything. So the budget that we'd got set aside for that, the bags, it ended up being a lot more, so we stopped doing it.
The alternative is to have a supply in the trucks. And when you've finished your roll, you can tie a tag onto your caddy, indicating that you need a new.
Well, I suppose then you're giving the driver an additional duty, which will slow the round, so that will potentially.
I've got Phil first.
Sorry. Just on that point.
Yeah, are we absolutely convinced that we've checked the best practice up and down the country and we've not missed a trick anywhere? That someone else has cracked this and really done well with it?
We have checked the best practice, and the best practice is offering the bags, and that drives a higher recycling rate. But that's the experience of the best recyclers. Whether or not that's uniformly the case,
Yeah. And secondly, from that, whatever we do on this particular thing, the communication is going to be absolutely vital. So that will need lots and lots of thinking through to get the right messages across. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I was just going to say, I think at home we buy them from supermarkets. So I get it, the whole incentivising at the outset, but then pointing people to where they can actually purchase them themselves. Otherwise, it just becomes an ongoing cost, I think, which is the point there, isn't it?
I think it was going to be to the point made earlier on that I think the point is if we give them away for free, it can be a bottomless pit of, oh, I want to use it for my dog waste, I'm going to use it for this, I'm going to use it for that, I'm going to use it to put kids' sandwiches in to take to school or whatever, and does the budget just run away with itself? Equally, the budget might not be so substantial that we actually care that it goes from 5 grand to 10 grand. I think we'd all probably swallow that. I think if it's going from 100 to 200, then that would be more significant. So I think I'd like to see a bit more detail about the expected costs of that service before we can make a decision on whether or not we want to do that. I think my other question was just around the So when we say it's best practice, we're saying it's best practice because it drives up recycling rates, and that's.
Participation rate in the food waste scheme.
And do we have any idea of how much it drives up participation? Is it a couple of percentage points? Is it doubling it? I think that's really helpful information.
So London Borough of Bromley, after introducing liners, food waste recycling rates increased by 25%. So that's one example, and there are other examples that we can share.
Okay, and then just another one from me, Chair, around where we say ideally we would procure recyclable / vegetable material bags. Why do we say ideally we would procure those? Because then everything else seems to suggest that that isn't the ideal position.
I suppose given that we're trying to drive forward less use of plastic bags, less waste to incineration. So principally, if we had a dream world, we'd prefer to provide that.
Being really purist about it all, we do that, but all the pragmatic evidence points to actually plastic.
Yeah, it's better.
Recycled plastic bags are actually far better. Okay, understood. Thank you.
I think just the point, it would be useful to know who would be eligible for those and what criteria would be around them, because I think, like others, I think, you know, for the most vulnerable, but really for the most vulnerable.
Okay.
Have you got what you need?
Yes, that's great. Thank you very much.
Okay, next.
This may be a more controversial question that we wanted to steer from the committee on, and this is looking at black bins. The first one that we think is a really useful which would be the idea of working with planning teams to consider securing Section 106 funding to deliver bins to new properties. This is not an approach that we've used before, and the councils have borne the cost of new bins to new developments. Looking just to take the temperature of the room of us actually approaching planning teams to look at securing Section 106 funding to contribute towards bin permits.
Yeah. So presumably that would then divert 106 funds away from other projects. So this would be a developer. The 106 money is going to go and pay for our bins rather than a play area, schools, NHS funding, etc. I personally would be entirely against trying to secure 106 monies for our bins, and I think as a resident I'd quite rightfully expect that developer contribution goes towards enhancing my community, not as it would be perceived by a resident, I think, to a cost recovery basis for the council to recoup some of its costs. Totally understand it from a commercial perspective from the council, but I think as a resident I'd fully expect that to be going to other amenities within my community.
Yeah, just from a political point of view, I think you would find that very difficult sell to some of, well, the controlling group at Tamworth Borough Council.
I'd echo that thought. It's clearly the public would want the improvements rather than funding what they would perceive the council should already be funding anyway. So I back up that point.
It's really useful. Thank you very much. So then the second item on the slide. Again, and we can bring more information back to the committee. One of the key things to driving up cycling rates, we think, is to consider the size and collection frequency of general waste bins, not now, but potentially after food waste is rolled out. And there is a significant bank of evidence to show that to boost recycling rates near to the 60%, as we know, we're hopefully targeting when we talk about the business plan. Most top performing councils that are there do consider slimming or having less frequent black bin collections. And I popped a link to the league tables on there so you can have a look. We know when we're doing waste composition analysis at the moment that a large percentage of our black bin waste is food waste. So once that comes out of those bins, arguably there will be more capacity in those bins for the remaining food waste that people, waste that people do get rid of. So really it was just a question to the committee. Would the committee be keen for us to bring back a more in-depth analysis of this so it can be considered moving forward? What are the committee's thoughts on it, and could we have a steer as to whether or not this is a piece of work that the committee would like us to investigate?
So I understand the steer, I understand the ask. A couple of things for me. One is we say in there that waste will no longer be going in black bins. There still will be waste going into black bins. So nappies, anyone with a young family will be filling it with nappies every week. Anyone with a dog, we're filling it with dog poo every week. So there'll still be quite a bit of stuff going in there. I did go and look at the league tables, and I suppose I'd question whether the 180 litre bins are actually driving the high recycling rates. So when you look at some of the lowest recycling councils in the country, Liverpool, Manchester, Nottingham, Sheffield, they've all got 180 litre bins as standard as well. So I think this is a classic case of correlation, not necessarily proving causation. I'd say if you look at perhaps some of the demographics of the councils that have got very high recycling rates, that's perhaps more what's driving those than the demographics of some of the other local authorities. I also, I suppose, would question doing it in one big bang and replacing it across the district. I think if a resident wants a smaller bin, fine, yeah, let's provide it to them. I'd feel deeply uncomfortable about forcing residents to have smaller bins, because I'm just not convinced the evidence is there to support what we say. There's appreciate there might be like alternative views in the room.
I think residents should have choice here, because it's very difficult to cater for every set of circumstances that are out there. As you said, some families would have the use of the bin as far as nappies and things like that, others don't. Then smaller families, smaller groups as well, smaller households. So to me, the choice, I think I'd be favouring in residents the opportunity to have a smaller bin rather than the.
But just on that point, though, the challenge of delivering a service with that amount of choice, you know, what would that look like? So I suppose it's probably just coming back and looking at the options and then feeding back to this group, really, I would have thought.
But I think we do that today. I mean, we've certainly got a 180 litre bin at home and a 241. Stop myself in now. That's because we've got a large family and we've got
A large family,
medical.
we do offer that.
Yeah.
The larger families, there is
Yeah.
additional bin capacity, and that would still be in place if we reduce the residual bin capacity.
I suppose what I'm saying is we've already got 180 litre bins and 240 in our stock, presumably, don't we, to offer that?
We deliver bins at the moment, depending on household size.
Yeah.
So if you're a single occupant, you'd get a 140.
Yeah.
If there's two, it's a 180, and then 3 to 5, it's 240.
So that feels like a really sensible and proportionate approach to what we're trying to achieve. It feels like we're already doing what we're saying we're going to do, or am I missing something?
No, I suppose the other point though was about what I heard loud is about understanding the demographics. I think was the point that
Yeah.
you made. To actually, if we can understand the demographic and how we can drive up those rates, and I think it's something we should look into, because, but I think you need to have the evidence to back up that. So I think that's what I would suggest.
Thanks, Chair. So I'm against writing strategies for the sake of writing strategies, and they really irritate me, I think it's fair to say. However, given the change in landscape of waste collection, waste disposal and that type of thing at the moment, what we're trying to achieve overall over the next 5-10 years or so, I think it would be important to actually write that out, because then I think we can have a far more meaningful conversation about some of these items when we see where we are going to and what outputs or outcomes we're expecting.
So not off the table, but we need to embed it in a proper strategy that we bring back for discussion.
Well, I sound a real pedant for a second. I think the Waste Committee is comprised of Councillor Whitehouse, myself and Councillor Foster, and whilst I've heard views from chief executives, they aren't formally constituted members of the Joint Waste Committee, and I'm not trying to be rude. I'm saying I think there's been a clear steer from 2 of the members, and whilst we might wish to take that into view and may very well wish to push that forward, I think we just need to be careful about where we're taking steers from.
Okay,
Yeah, no problem. So just a few extras now. So we've got the Recycle for Good campaign was launched in November. Today it's been covered in social media, a few local print articles and at local and national events. And it's set to be featured on the 2 liveried trucks that will go out and about across the district, as well as in some compactor bins that are being launched in Lichfield City, Fazeley and Burntwood by next Monday. And we'll be working with our communications team and LWMTS to roll this out further. So the next action for us is to develop a resource pack so each of the councils can actually use this branding independently on social media, etc. And that's underway at the moment. I have to drive up the sponsorship with the same points as we discussed around the vehicle livery, so that we can start driving this campaign forward with greater activity, which will be really positive. So that it's heading in the right direction, but we do need to ramp up the activity around this, and we are working towards that. Questions?
I really support this campaign. I think it's been really. I mean, I think it's been a bit of a long drum roll though. I just wonder if we've got some sort of clarity about what we're trying to achieve through this campaign. I'm fully behind it, absolutely fully behind it. I just think it'd be really useful to be able to turn around in a year and say, this is, we were successful. I'm just concerned at the moment, we might undertake activity for a year, but might not be able to measure ourselves and say, were we successful or not? I'm just wondering if we've got some sort of KPIs or something which would say, yeah, even if they're activity based.
So that would be incorporated in the business plan. So the idea of the Recycle for Good campaigns, it drives those KPIs up in the business plan. But we could always incorporate further ones if you feel that that's not.
No, that's fine. If that's where they're captured, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, I suppose I'm just really keen that because obviously we've expended quite a bit of time and effort on it, on what I think will be a good campaign. I just hate for us to turn around in a year and be able to not be able to say we were successful.
no,
So just a quick staff and finance and governance update. So just to say that the service will be delivered on budget for 24-25 with probably a slight underspend. We're finalising that. Following the departure of Steve G, who used to head up the service, we've now got Vicky Woodhouse and Darren Phillips and Peter Wood, who's not here tonight, who've stepped up to lead the service in the interim period whilst we carry out a restructure. And we're also going to be carrying out a base budget review just to ensure that all the finances are very transparent moving forward. So there's real clarity as we move forward into what is going to be a very exciting period in terms of budgets, etc., moving forward with all the new simpler recycling initiatives. And the base budget analysis will come to the next Joint Waste Committee. So that will be something that we share with you then. The Joint Waste Committee, according to its constitution, should meet 4 times a year, and the meetings are now in the diary, being supported by Will and the governance team, which is great. And that, just to reassure committee that the 4 meetings a year are supported by monthly meetings of the Joint Waste Partnership, which feature the officers sat around this table, where we look at the emerging business plan, the rolling action plan and the risk log, and those are working really, really well, and the partnership's really strong. So that's a really positive step forward. So the committee steer we really wanted around the table, and we have sounded this out, but we felt it was worth noting in the minutes, is that both TBC and LDC have indicated they'll put the EPR funding in the reserve. So that's the extended producer responsibility funding in the reserve, so that as the future landscape becomes clearer, we can ensure we've got the right funding in place to support that. And I just really wanted to note that was a commitment from both the council, because we haven't formally noted that anywhere previously.
right. Well, from our point of view, that's definitely what we're going to be doing.
What's the implications of that? Is that just, we're just saying we're literally just tucking it away until we know what the use it for? What's the?
It's just because the government funding is not clear, you know, moving forward. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
And there's lots of other issues that are coming along, like starting bottles and stuff like that. And I think to be prudent at this moment in time, I think that's the way we would feel you know, happiest that, you know, we, at this moment in time, we don't know what the budgets are going to be like moving forward. You know, we've only got one year at the most, so I think we just hang fire and, you know, what we do with that at the moment. Would that be fair comment from our side?
I think some of the councils have used this extended producer responsibility funding to balance their budgets in effect, so they've allocated it to other services, but idea. We don't know what
We don't know.
likely costs are going to be, so we want to make sure that's ring-fenced and earmarked for this.
Don't want to leave it. Don't want to leave it in reserve so long that the new unitary authority tax it all up as they do and spend.
Yeah.
I'd back up that clearly we need to be cautious of that because of the uncertainty going forward. To pick up on Doug's point as well, we just need to keep an eye on how long we keep that for, and anything else that might come along that sort of might get in the way of that policy. So not just leave it there, but actively manage it, I think.
Last but one slide. So just a few other updates. We now have an automated missed bin page, which is using UiPath robotics. So at the end of every day, when those missed streets are identified, they automatically get published to the website, which is driving down inquiries to our team, which is great and providing much more resident satisfaction. And we're also implementing a missed bin triage, which will reduce about 40% of missed bin reports. So that asks a series of questions and ensures that those reports that do come through to us are actually valid and genuine, which is fantastic, and well done to the digital team on that. Our recycling dashboard has been published to Power BI and is available online, and we're updating that regularly, and that obviously feeds into and supports the business plan that shows both Lichfield and Tamworth statistics separately, as well as our combined statistics. In terms of upcoming activity, we need to reassure our back office system, CCT monitoring of our vehicles, and that's really important for insurance claims and health and safety purposes to make sure our teams are actually complying with required standards of behaviour, so that's really important. And we're rolling out black bin stickers, and there's a picture there for you. So this is a campaign that the County Council has funded in terms of the stickers themselves. And what it does is encourage people not to put recyclable items in their black bin and be recycled. So those will be going out to local households from, I'm not quite sure when.
28th.
Is it the 20th? It is the 28th of April. So thank you to Vicky for sorting that out. So yeah, any questions on that?
Oh, yep.
Chair, on the recycling dashboard, and that's really good that we've pulled that together, because I know that's been a long time coming, a bit of a headache behind the scenes to get all that data in one place. Ones on that one, we include the street sweeping tonnage in the data there. I suppose I'm trying to think how we might make that data more meaningful to residents. I think as a resident, if I went onto that Power BI platform, I think I'd see a general trend over a period, which is fine, but it wouldn't tell me much more than that. And I wonder how we might make that data more accessible and meaningful for residents to be, you know, this week in Lichfield District, for instance, we achieved 45% recycle or 46 or something like that, rather than just kind of lumping everything in there. And I'm just wondering if there's any opportunity for us to think about how we make that data more meaningful to residents.
So in terms of Power BI, we are building our skills all the time with regards to Power BI. So there's certainly no reason we can't revisit that and have a look at it.
Yeah, I totally get we've gone from having 100 different spreadsheets everywhere to having it in, which is like I'm not trying to knock the
Next step, I agree.
It's a million miles. So that's not what I suppose. It's that next step now, isn't it? To say actually, I'd love us to be in a position where every week on our socials we're going, thanks Lichfield, you recycled this many tons this week, or this percentage or whatever it is, and really start getting into people's psyche of recycling and repeating that message.
It's a really good idea. Yeah. Okay. Leave it with us.
And on the black bin stickers, I have a visceral hatred of just putting signs up to tell people to do things, and I'm just wondering what the cost of this is to the Joint Waste Partnership, and also measuring whether we actually think putting a sticker on a bin is genuinely going to change behaviour.
I don't have the cost to hand you.
Not, the cost of the stickers covered by the county council. They've paid for the stickers.
Yeah, that's fine. But it's the staffing costs that stickers are the cheap bit of it, though, aren't they? It's the extra staffing for a couple of weeks that all.
I'm anticipating one additional crew on the refuse
Okay.
to ease pressures on the crews, and they've got time to
Yeah,
do
of course. Yeah, they
do
need
it
the time to
properly.
do that. Yeah, yeah.
Otherwise it'll be upside down back to front.
Yeah, exactly. And I totally get that. I think it'd be really beneficial, in all seriousness, to say, does this actually change behaviour? Because whilst it might feel like the right thing to do, if we're going to put an extra crew on for a week or whatever, and it doesn't change the dial on recycling, I think next time we come to do something, we might want to think, well, that didn't work. Should we try something else instead?
Absolutely. We're hoping it will serve as an aid memoir for people and just have
Yes.
a look at it and have fun doing that.
It's the first time we've targeted the black bin.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, rather than the blue bin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I totally get that. Totally get that.
It's trying to look at the nudge behaviour, so it's
Yeah.
that prompt for people to remind them that there are other mechanisms, and we won't know the outturn until we see the recycling rates into the future, and the
Exactly that.
composition analysis for further into the future as well, that might be done as a county-wide scheme again. So
I suppose what I'm saying is if we can draw a line at the point that we do it and measure it, so again, we've got something, some metric that we can look back and say, was it successful, was it not successful? Again, just so if it is successful, we've got something we can point at and say, yes, we spent this money and this is the impact it had on recycling.
So we've just had a team of people that we've been working with, have had the lovely job of actually going out and doing composition analysis on our black bins.
Oh, was that everyone winting on Facebook about people inspecting their bins?
We will have a data set we can compare against once they've gone and we can do.
It made me laugh when everyone was saying we saw someone from the council come in and taken our rubbish. Like, I think that's what we do every week, isn't it?
Any other questions?
Anything else? No.
And the final slide, which you may all know yourselves anyway, is just a quick insight of what's coming up with regards to the simpler recycling. So obviously we've got the food waste collections rolling out from 2026, and the EPR income changes will hit in 2026. The deposit return scheme that will potentially impact on our recycler income and collection volumes comes in 2027 at the moment, although may well get pushed back. And the plastic film packaging and plastic bags and blue bins will come in 2027 as well. So that will also impact our recycling. And then we've got the emissions trading scheme in 2028, which could impact on our tonnages and composition. So all of these things we're working in partnership with the SWOG, the lovely named SWOG, which stands for Staffordshire Waste Officers Group. And Vicky attends that regularly, and we're making sure that we're engaged in those conversations. And we will keep you posted in future meetings, but I don't know if there's any questions on those things that are coming up.
That's a question on the deposit return scheme. Presumably, we anticipate a significant downturn in recycling that we collect. Well, to potentially answer my own question now, I suppose there's not a lot we can do about that, is there? That's just the way that national policy's driving us, and we need to support that.
And then-
Benefit for us, I think, because they renegotiated the last fleet contract, where if we return any vehicles with this particular, it was a added value. Gave us that there's no implications, no cost to the service if we return a vehicle.
Brilliant. So if we find we've got an extra vehicle,
Unfortunately, yeah, that's not a direction we want to go.
no, but if that's the way national policy,
So it's going to cost us.
okay, super.
And that is it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lizzie.
So that's the joint waste update. So we've got joint waste charges.
You should have the fourth in your pack. So This is a report that we're recommending to committee, and if it's agreed on tonight, it will go through the various governance processes at the individual councils. But the recommendation before you tonight is to increase the charges that are levied for waste, white goods, scrap metal collections, and the replacement black bins that we currently charge for, as well as the hire of refuse bins at multi-occupancy properties and recycling collections for charities and clubs that don't trade on a regular basis. So the charges that we levy help to cover the cost of the service, which obviously increases year on year, things like NI, etc. And it's proposed that the prices that we do charge should be amended the 1st of April each year in line with the published CPI rate in the 15th of January. And I've included a link there for you to that, rounded up or down to the nearest pound, and that the implementation of this should be delegated to myself and Annie and the relevant members to take that forward in our own individual councils. So really, we're looking for a steer from committee tonight as to whether or not that 3% price increase is something that the committee is willing to support, and we can then take that forward. And I've incorporated a benchmarking in the report, which shows that we are relatively low cost anyway, and included a risk assessment. And we don't feel that the increase in prices will increase the risk of fly tipping, which I know is a member concern in Tamworth. We don't feel that that would be the case, purely because people that ordinarily use the service are unlikely to have a car or the ability to move those items, so the likelihood of them then fly tipping that is very, very low. So really it's a view as to whether or not committee supports that proposal.
Thanks, Chair. No, I was just going to say, just for accuracy though, it's both councils, whichever appropriate body that actually approved fees and charges, not so this committee is recommending. Just for, I'm a bit of a pedant now, sitting next to the leader.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear.
Mine was a similar question, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And there's just a couple of points of accuracy in the report. Our rounding up and rounding down. It doesn't look like
Doesn't it?
because now
Okay.
we've gone down. We've an increase on hire of refuse bins. Okay, 285.73, but we're only charging 283.
And the same for
And the same one for
black bin or paper.
as well.
Great. I can change that.
I think that should be
Resolve that.
24 and 286, I think would be.
Yeah.
Oh, and 146.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, are we talking about implementing it from the 1st of April
Yes.
now? Especially we've got the right approvals.
Yeah, we obviously have to take that through the committee.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
What?
No,
I think the concept of doing this is absolutely spot on, because a short-term on council sort of picks up that when things are not reviewed on a regular basis, it causes a bigger catch-up at another time, then becomes more unpalatable. And I think if you look at lots of other facilities out there, particularly things like mobile phones as an example, they do build in annual increases. So the concept of this, I think, is absolutely spot on. And as you said in the introduction, our costs are getting up all the time as well. So clearly that has to be borne in mind when we start looking at these things. And the comparison still looks like we're very competitive. I would give this my support.
We had exactly the same in the Tamworth Borough Council. We didn't put up the green bin charges in line, and then when we had, we were forced to in the end, and we had a big hit. So, it's much better and much more palatable if we do it on a regular basis. Yeah.
Do we know if this service makes a loss or a surplus today?
Will we come back to you that when we've done the cost-based analysis exercise that we're doing?
Absolutely. I think I think if we're proposing to put costs up, that would imply that we need to, if we're operating this on a cost recovery basis. If we're not operating it on a cost recovery basis and we're seeking to make surplus out of it, then I think that's a different conversation as to whether we're recovering costs or not. I'd imagine we're actually making a loss on it, but I think that's a much, as I say, making a loss. Yeah, we're having to subsidise the service, and I'd like that information in front of me before I say, yeah, let's put the prices up.
I think we can confidently say we're not making a surplus on the service we provide, whether or not we're actually recovering full cost of that cost-based analysis that we're doing.
That's an important piece to work out where we go from there. And another slightly facetious point, does anybody genuinely pay us to take scrap metal away?
Yes. So are you happy? We'll take, so it's basically
Yeah,
the
I'm happy with that.
so we'll take it forward
Yeah.
to the relevant governance procedures in the vote
Exactly,
council's rates.
Caveat that with that we need the cost-based analysis before we take that forward, so we understand whether we're making.
Time for the 1st of April when we would ordinarily put those prices up.
Yeah, I would really like us to understand whether or not, you know, and equally it works the other way. If we're making a huge, if there's a massive gap between, if we're subsidising this to a huge amount at the moment, I'd suggest then we ought to be looking at that now and playing catch up so that we can then build in a proper CPI review.
I suppose our view was that we put them up now, knowing that that costs time, and then if next year when we have to review, we put them up.
Just seems odd that we would seek to put charges up without knowing to what extent today we're subsidising or making a surplus, because it feels finger in the air rather than.
Not really, because the CPI reflects the cost increases that we know we are facing anyway as an organisation. So the way in which we've priced it previously is something that exists, but we know as an organisation we're facing NI increases in fuel, increases in other associated costs. So that increase reflects those external factors that impact our service. If we then need to then increase the prices further because actually we decide that we don't want to subsidise as a partnership because we found out that actually it does cost us, then I think that's a different conversation. But certainly we know that the cost of delivering the service will increase by around CPI, and our Section 151 officers are content with that proposal in terms of that increase.
So could you give me an assurance this evening that we are subsidising this service today and not making a surplus?
I think we can easily say that.
Based on that assurance, then I think we should. Then I'm happy to support it.
Yeah. We got any comments about charges?
Only what I said right at the very start.
Will that analysis be done?
So we're having to be mindful of the fact that we've got year end with our finance team, so we can't use all the time that we need of them because that process needs to go through. But we're starting that process this week, and then it will take a period of time to get that done. So hopefully back to next committee.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to item number 7, which is the draft business plan. Sorry?
Sharon.
Okay then. Yeah, sorry, Kerry. Yeah.
So the constitution of the joint Waste Committee requires that we have a business plan that we work towards. And what's before you tonight is a first draft of the business plan that we help us to reach the targets that individually as councils we've set, as well as what we hope would be a joint ambition. I don't know if you want me to walk you through the business plan or if you've had chance to review it yourselves and you'd like just ask questions. You'd like us to walk you through it? No.
That's question.
Probably heard enough of my voice anyway. No, any questions?
Got any questions or comments or observations?
I think, thank you, Chair. It's brilliant that we've got a business plan. That's, I think, a step ahead of where we've been in the past. I think that's really, really good. I think and I'm just going to jump around now, sorry, because I'm my notes. So where we say on making sure I'm in the right document now, page 36 of the pack, which I think is page 6 of the report.
Report or the plan?
6 of the plan, 36 of the overall report.
Yeah.
So we say, well, I sat over this side of the room, the percentage split to be used, and we do it based on housing numbers.
Yeah.
This is a question for discussion. Is that the fairest way of apportioning the costs? So I'm bound to say this because I'm literally a district council, I know, but I'm throwing it out there as a point for discussion. Rural services in rural areas are just more expensive to deliver. They just are. That's just, you know, part of the nature of delivering rural services. Obviously, Lichfield District Council has a much greater share of rural properties than Tamworth. Are we happy that that's an approach that works? And I appreciate it's got to work for everybody, right? So totally get that. Is that just a historic way of splitting it that we've stuck to and we're happy with, or is it a historic way that we've used and not really revisited and thought about if there's a better metric or a better way of doing it?
So we are doing, and it's placed under that table, we are doing a cost split analysis at the moment. The property split is something that has been historically in place, but we think that there are better ways potentially, for example, on the income that we receive for recyclates, etc., to actually split it on things like tonnages instead. So that might be an example where there's a better split. And there may indeed be a better split, for example, on staffing and fuel that we might want to contemplate. I don't necessarily think that a straight property split for every element of our budget is the most appropriate way forward. And that piece of work is underway at the moment.
And that's been from there, yeah.
Team at Tamworth. So that will certainly come back to committee for discussion.
I fully appreciate it. It's a partnership and we need to, I'm just saying from Lichfield, I'm sure Tamworth will have their own views as well. On social value, so page 6 of the plan, 36 of the report. Could someone just tell me in a sentence what those 2 paragraphs actually mean? Because I read and reread that last night and thought, what does it actually mean?
So when we award contracts, we'll negotiate social value out of those contracts. Obviously, Lichfield's negotiating the contracts on behalf of Tamworth, but the ambition is generated that will go back into the partnership area rather than benefiting Lichfield District Council. Okay,
so what we're saying in those 2 paragraphs is social value generated from the partnership is going to stick within the partnership area. It's across both Lichfield and Tamworth and not just sit in one or the other.
You're telling me I'm waffling?
I didn't use that word. Flipping heck, that was hard work getting through those 2 paragraphs.
Those paragraph kind of stumped me as well, and I suppose for me it would just be interesting to understand the real level of so what are the activities of social value. So rather than giving a descriptor on the approach, so what have we achieved through social value in relation to how many apprenticeships, what have we done? That's what I'd be interested in.
So I think that will be moving forward.
No, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, but it's about what have we been able to secure.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what we want to report on. Yeah, absolutely.
without labouring that point, I think that as a resident, if I was to read that, I'd want to know we're creating 4 apprenticeships, make sure there's 2 in Tamworth and 2 in Lichfield, to make sure kids at risk of going into long-term unemployment are gainfully, or something like that, that actually means something to a lay person like me. Yeah, can I carry on, or do you want? Or I've got a few more.
You carry on.
All right.
Your bits and then
So
anything else.
KPIs. One of these KPIs really struck me actually, and it made me feel slightly sick reading it, if I'm honest with you. Missed bins per 1,000 collections, so it's about 1 to 2,000. Missed assisted collections, 1 in 6. My heart genuinely sank when I read that.
And that's why it's in there.
Yeah.
Because it's something that we know and have been working towards improving.
Yeah.
We felt it should be in there because it's something
Yeah.
that we recognise.
Totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. What's the challenge behind that? Because that feels ordinarily. So just so I'm not misunderstanding as well. So in my head, this is somebody can't get out of the house. They put the bin out the front door. We go up to, instead of just taking it from the street, we walk up to their door or down the alleyway or whatever, and we bring it up onto the bin and we take it back. And we're missing about 1 in 6 of those at the moment. What a sobering statistic, I thought.
It's not 1 in 6 of assisted collections, it's 1 in,
I think it is.
not of assisted collections, there's several thousand across the district. It's as a percentage of the total collection. So it's every 1,000 total collections. It's not of assisted collections. That's not the percentage of assisted collections that are being missed. That's the percentage of the missed bins that are assisted.
Right, okay, so that is a slightly different statistics. Okay, right. So hang on.
Don't feel sick.
Yeah, okay, right. So what we're saying is, out of all of the missed bins, 16% of them are assisted.
Yes.
Okay. I think then the header on that is grossly misleading, because that says percentage of missed assisted collections and 16.84%. So that says to me we've missed 16.84% of assisted collections. Not out of all of the assisted collections, which is only 1 in 2,000, 16.84% of those are assisted collections. Those are such wildly different numbers that I think you'd.
But they're trying to be helpful.
Please, because I'm not.
Would the committee not rather know what percentage of, given the importance of them as well, but what percentage of assisted collections are missed, rather than what percentage of the missed bins are assisted? But I think we should just go back to percentage of assisted collections missed. Change the data, reflect that.
Change the, I don't like the data. Change it.
Yeah. I'll make another point on PIs as a non-constituted member of the committee. Chair, I mentioned this to Lizzie earlier as well. So the overall recycling rate targets going forward reflect the joint results currently, whereas Lichfield, I believe, recycles slightly more than Tamworth. So I'm not sure that I agree that the target should be the same. I think it should be relevant to each council, because actually my leader might say, I want 90% for a recycling rate. Even your leader may say they want 70%, or might be the other way around, etc. as well. But I think it feels like at the moment, because Lichfield, I believe, recycled overall about 43% this current year. But there is no growth in our recycling rate next year for Lichfield, whereas there is reflected for Tamworth, quite rightly, if that's what you want to do as well. I just don't think that works as a joint target. Yeah.
Incorporate the separate ones as well.
Unless, so I would say from a Lichfield perspective, I'm making it up. Why would we not say go to 50% from 43%? Now, if Tamworth is happy to leap from 39% to 50%, then we could have a joint target, couldn't we? If not, then it has to be 2 targets.
Again, understanding that profile and
Exactly.
Yeah.
can't use the same cloth across both districts as there are new ones.
Because we're at different starting points, aren't we, Chair?
Two more points for me, and then I'm going to be quiet, I promise. The customer satisfaction rate. I'm slightly concerned that we're putting a KPI around future customer satisfaction rates when we don't know our current customer satisfaction rates. What if our customer, so the thing that we receive most compliments about, I think, is actually about our bin collection. Like we have, very rarely have evidence until our Meet the Leader thing the other night, in fact, who complain about bins sort of on a day-to-day basis, got really high customer satisfaction. I'd hate to think that we're setting a KPI which is lower than our current customer satisfaction rate. So I think we should probably just wait for the baseline before we start predicting that. And then the final one for me is on Appendix 2. I think it's on Appendix 2. With me, it's going to be about, I know exactly what it's about, but I can't find the text that it relates to. So carbon emissions, as that in the page 44, sorry. Basically, I think it's really important that we strive to be cost efficient, that we strive to have high customer services, etc., and we drive recycling up, etc. We also really need to drive our emissions down, but I think driving our emissions down should be last on the list of our objectives. And what we certainly shouldn't do is seek to put on additional costs to our residents or to risk having lower satisfaction rates at the cost of reducing our carbon emissions. I think that absolutely should be a KPI, but I think it should absolutely be last on the list. I think we should capture that business plan.
More than that, you mean? And it is at the bottom.
I don't know what that says there. Is it? I don't have my glasses on me. What page is that on? Sorry.
Page 13 of the business plan. So
13.
on is the last.
So
We haven't annotated it being less.
Appendix 1.
oh, there we go. Yeah. So yeah, but that's not a hierarchy on that page, is it? So whilst it's last, we don't say that it's less important. And for me,
Almost a supplementary set of KPIs.
I don't know how we capture it in there, if I'm honest with you. But I really do think resident satisfaction, cost efficiency, etc., should come before. What I'd hate to see is a report in 3 years' time saying, "Brilliant, yeah, we've cut all our carbon emissions, but the cost per household's doubled and resident satisfaction is at 10%." That's, and I know I'm taking that to an extreme, but I think we've got to retain a focus on what's really important to us.
Yeah.
That's it from me, Chair.
I sort of agree with that comment, yeah. Phil, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. A primary objective is to deliver value for money. Refuge collectors at the end of the day. Yeah.
Okay.
If we can make it more greener, then
Yeah.
brilliant.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Then we try to do that, but not at the detriment of any of the other key components that we deliver.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, any other comments about that? I've got one, by the way. This on the Simply Recycling for Residents, you've got Community Champions Programme.
Yeah.
So I've not heard of this before. Is it something new we're doing or? Right, okay. And so what would that be? It said recruit and train local volunteers to serve as recycling ambassadors. So what would you see their role as being in
I'm
terms
going
of?
to hand to Vicky, who's much more.
Caught in the act.
Suppress the cough.
Yeah, you're right, you're right.
We currently have 2 recycling officers who engage with our residents, 2 for 80,000 household.
Right.
And what we have a team of volunteers who can support the recycling officers and do some of those engagements with residents, host events, get involved in reuse more, and just be able to promote the message more for us, because it's very difficult when you've got only got 2 people whose job it is to try and help people recycle more.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you very much. So that was the draft business plan review of risk log. Next on the agenda, is that you again?
You've all had the risk plan. I'm not proposing to get through it line by line, but if anyone's got any questions or comments on it, you know, you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If I may come in here then, so I was a bit concerned that the rollout of the food waste caddies is or food waste rather is high risk, because actually the mitigation for managing that effectively, like the procurement already being in place, the project plan in place, etc. I like you're being a little bit harsh, but there's still a high risk that we won't achieve this.
I suppose it's just that we don't have the funding for the actual rollout yet in terms of the revenue.
The revenue funding.
Yeah, so that was really what I was.
We'll have our settlement in June, July, won't we? But yeah, it's not like we're not going to fund it though, is it? Because you can't not fund it.
Is that not a financial risk rather than a reputational risk? Just on that, sorry, on the reputation list, how do we, I suppose it's back to comms, are we confident as a committee that we're landing the message really clearly that this is national legislation that's coming in that we're implementing rather than us just coming up with an idea to spend a few million quid? I think I know the answer, but
I think that's why we need to make sure we've got a robust comms plan that backs up this and a comms strategy and timeline of when we're delivering things. I think what I'd like to see probably at the future board is that in-depth comms strategy for the team.
We are waiting as well. There's talk of a national campaign and rollout, so we are waiting to hear what that phasing may be, because obviously everyone in the country has got to deliver this by the end of March 2026. Some authorities are already doing it, so they are looking at a national level through DEFRA, so we are waiting on that information as well, which will, because we may get assets that we can utilise that will be consistent, and also through SWOG as well. We'll be looking at joint campaigning, so we've got a really strong message across the board.
the case, and sorry through you, is that the case that it is definitely coming, we're just awaiting details, or is it?
Haven't confirmed it yet.
I suppose I'm just thinking about when we think about comms, then if there is a really strong national message coming, actually our comms as a precursor to that should be locally we're ahead of the curve, we're protecting your best interests, we've got good deal, that sort of comms, rather than it's actually happening. So it'd be really useful to know whether or not that's coming.
We haven't been told yet what the timeline is. They're going to decide on it.
That's not like something. That's what they're doing.
So yeah, we are keeping abreast of it, and the Staffordshire Waste officer group will be, you know, they do discuss that as well. So
yeah, just I mean, there were 3 red risks on here. Just the one around length of agency, I didn't find that need to investigate was mitigation, but I presume you're going to come back at a future board meeting and then give us an update on that, so that's fine.
That is helpful.
That was my question.
That's yours as well. Okay. Any other comments on the risk register? So are you going to update that one from reputational to financial? Yeah, that's good. Then the final item on the agenda is work programme 2025-2026.
Oh, we can make it up while we're here tonight.
That's exciting.
In all seriousness, Chair, I think as well as the comms plan, which I think absolutely needs to be on there, I think we've played catch up tonight for a year of missed joint waste committees, and it's felt in details, and I know it's been a slog and everyone else in the room as well. Do we think, well, I'm not going to open it for discussion tonight. I think for the work programme would probably need to come back here and think about ways of working and making sure that we get ourselves into a cadence that works. I think there's a few questions I've got about transparency and accountability about how we get things onto the agenda and then agreed, which caused me the political problems. So it'd be really useful to bring that back on the agenda, just to think about how we shape the future work of the committee.
It'd be helpful probably if I don't know what it's a swag or the swag or the whatever. This group, the joy, if you probably just work on what you think would be and suggest that to the committee, that would be helpful rather than a blank page.
Okay, there was something about use of fuels, that's not on the agenda, isn't it? No. We're not going to discuss that tonight. Oh, okay, thank you very much. Well, it's been a very interesting meeting and thank you very much for your attendance. I don't think I'll be doing it again for a while. It was a baptism of fire, so
Very well, Chair.
thank you very much for your time.